What's poppin', y'all? We back at it with another episode of Cartel Wives. This time we're doing chapter 5. I am your host, Sha Il. Thank you for joining me. If you have yet to hit the subscribe button, please do. Hit the like button and the notification bell. And let's keep this channel moving forward. Last week we dealt with Viviana's upbringing and her growing up with her father being a Chicago cop and her experience as far as the neighborhood and gangs and stuff like that. This week, I'm not sure what we're in store for, so let's get it. If you're interested in purchasing Cartel Wives in any of its forms, there's an Amazon link in the description.
Chapter 3. Junior. Olivia. After Leo went to prison in 1998, I was done with him, so I filed for divorce. That's when I hooked up with Kay. Everybody called Kevin Garcia by his nickname, Kay. He was a high-ranking leader of the Latin Kings and ran Little Village. He didn't look like your average gangbanger. You didn't see him on a street corner dressed in black and gold. But he didn't have to. He was somebody important. I'd seen him around for a while, starting back when I was going to house parties in high school, and I'd always felt an attraction to him. He was so powerful, and I was drawn to that. He had nice cars and iced-out jewelry. He was flashy and flamboyant, which was right up my alley because that's what I liked.
Val of the game. We know Val of the game.
Loud. He moved a lot of drugs through Little Village and all over Chicago, but he owned a restaurant, which made him legit on paper. Before Leo got arrested and we had to forfeit everything, I was always in designer clothes. I'd gotten a boob job, back when no one else was getting one, and
Facts.
People called me the $1 million bitch.
Facts.
It was hard not to notice me, and Kay had. From the first time he saw me one night. He didn't start to go after me until my husband went to prison, though. The case was all over the news. He started pursuing me because he wanted to be with me, not because I had money. After all, he had plenty of his own. He'd come by my mom's house constantly, trying to seek me out. I never gave in, until finally, one day, I did. Okay, I'll go out with you. A big smile spread across his face. My dad walked the streets as a cop every day, and he knew trouble when he saw it. He was protective of his little girl, and
Boy, Daddy's red flags must have went into overtime. Bing, 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 bing. Alarms went off. Bells started sounding all over the place. All his red flags went off. But, Papi, you got to see the red flags in your daughter. She led a game, bro. She led a game.
and he hated Kay on sight.
I bet.
How can you be with someone like that? He
bet.
asked. He's a punk. Even though I knew he was right, I was so in love that I didn't give a shit. He's not like that anymore, I said. Everybody changes. Then I flipped it on him. You're so judgmental. Kay had a rap sheet a mile long, but he treated me like gold. He was a ghetto superstar. He knew everybody, and everybody knew him. The Spanish gangs, the black gangs, drug dealers, and people whose names I never learned. Every night, he and I would go to a basketball court downtown named Hoops, and he and all the moneymakers would rent it out starting at midnight. After games, they'd talk business. One day in 1999, these two sweet-looking 18-year-old identical twins drove up in separate luxury cars. They were baby-faced, handsome, and well-dressed. And even though they wore iced-out custom jewelry, designer man bags, and nice, fresh cuts, they seemed humble. I just knew they were somebody from the way everyone gravitated to them. Olivia.
Yeah, there was the plug. The plug and gravity goes together.
These are my little brothers, Peter and Junior, said Kay as he pulled them into a big hug. One of them put his hand out to shake mine. Get the fuck out of here, I thought. Nobody did that anymore. People usually stared at my boobs, but these guys looked me straight in the eye and greeted me like a real, proper lady. I started talking with Junior, and I didn't realize he was so much younger than me because he was so mature. He couldn't have been more of a gentleman either. Kay was so flamboyant, with his Gucci and Armani clothes and his big
And let it be known, whenever somebody gives you if you're a woman, they give a handshake like this. It's either they don't want to hug you at all, or they want to hug you real good, and they're like, hold on, let me just bypass that thought and throw this hand out there.
personality. Kay was so flamboyant, with his Gucci and Armani clothes and his big personality. But sometimes I could see right through him. Junior was just as impressive, but he was genuine and sincere. He seemed so different. I was surprised he was in this life. "You're so sweet. I have to hook you up with one of my girlfriends," I said after we stopped talking. "Sure."
My girlfriend in the mirror. You heard.
"Sure," he said. "Just tell Kay to call me." Kay told me that night that he'd started working closely with the twins. They were making big moves on the streets, and they were supplying him with quality work from Mexico. Kay wasn't a street-level dealer anymore, but he oversaw them, and he was such an opportunist that Peter and Junior had become a big asset to him. In return, he gave them protection and prevented anyone from robbing them. Even though they were only 18, Peter and Junior were a big deal. They developed a sophisticated network of suppliers, stash houses, and workers, and they were selling narcotics to gang leaders like Kay. They'd made their first drug deal the year before, 30 kilos of cocaine with a street value of almost $1 million, and their business had boomed from that day on. Kay and the twins had all grown up in Little Village, but their motivations had been different. The twins didn't know a life outside of the drug trade. It was something they'd been born into. Their mom had her first baby when she was only 12.
12. So 12 years old. So how old was their pops? Was it their pops that she was with? How old was the pops? Like, yo, we wilding over here with this story.
Him with quality work from Mexico. Kay wasn't a street-level dealer anymore, but he oversaw of cocaine with a street value of almost $1 million. Then moved to Chicago in the 60s and started working as a forklift operator. The twins had all grown up in Little Village, but their motivations had been different. The twins didn't know a life outside of the drug trade. It was something they'd been born into. Their mom had her first baby when she was only 12, then had 6 more children. The twins were the youngest. Their dad had grown up in poverty on a farm in Mexico, dropped out of school in the 3rd grade, then moved to Chicago in the 60s and started working as a forklift operator at Brock's Candy. He made $14,000 a year, which is hard to support 7 kids on. So he became what they call a coyote, smuggling illegal immigrants over the border. Then he moved up to cocaine. Pretty soon, he was bringing about 35 kilos over the border every month. He bought a 2-story house and a new Chevrolet station wagon, living out his version of the American dream. But just before Junior and Peter were born in 1981, the feds arrested their dad for possession, taking him away while his pregnant wife and kids stood there and watched.
Out of there.
He spent the next 7 years in prison while his wife suffered, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Cooking, cleaning, paying bills, raising newborn twins plus 5 other children, and visiting her husband every chance she could. When Junior and Peter's dad got out, they were so happy to have him in their lives and were eager to learn from him. Unfortunately, he wasn't the best role model. When they were 7,
he was the professor, that's what he was.
He asked them to put their little hands into gas tanks to fish out bricks of marijuana, then taught them to use a triple beam scale to separate his drugs into pounds. At 8, they translated drug deals for him. By 9, they were riding in flatbed trucks across the border with him, sitting on top of tarps that covered shipments of drugs.
That's it. That's the language they knew. They didn't know no other language but trafficking. You know what I'm saying? So they spoke 4 languages: English, Spanish, twin, and trafficking.
Their dad went on the run when they were 12, fleeing another drug charge, and their older brother Adrian stepped in to help raise them. Unfortunately, he went to prison for drug conspiracy too. then after 5 years was deported to Mexico on the day he was released. Peter and Junior had to do something to support their family, so they used the only skill they'd ever known: drug trafficking, using their dad's connections back in Mexico. Unlike Kay, they weren't in a gang, and they were peaceful. Kay had gone to prison for aggravated battery and attempted murder, and the Latin kings praised him while his enemies feared him. Peter and Junior didn't even carry weapons. They needed the money. Kay just wanted it. I kept seeing Peter and Junior out more and more, and every time I'd see Junior, my face would light up. He made me feel alive. It just felt good to talk to somebody who was always so positive. He was like a breath of fresh air, always laughing and joking, and I loved the person he was. I wanted Kay to hang out more with him, to be more like him. Even though we had chemistry, it was just an innocent friendship, but Kay would sometimes notice us together, and he'd watch us out of the corner of his eye. He genuinely loved Junior, but
See, so technically there was a little something going on there. If we're going by what the stories are saying, if it's not how we think it is, that there was a full-on relationship happening behind Kay's back, there was, like she just said, the chemistry was there, the chemistry was involved, and it didn't go unnoticed. Had Kay looking out the corner of his eye. Ironically, they're both feeling this at the same time, and this is why it's so hard to believe that there wasn't a, wait a minute, you feel this too? Yeah, I feel that. You feel that too? Okay, yeah. Let's quietly, no. As far as they're concerned, as far as they've said, wasn't nothing popping until after it was over.
But seeing me happy with someone else caused his insecurities to get the best of him. Still, I was all K's at this point because my divorce from Leo had gone through easily. He treated me like gold, even helping me start up the salon I'd always dreamed of. I hired over 10 stylists, and the place was booked out for months. I was working from the time I opened to midnight every day. Because business was booming, Kay and I opened up a massive car wash. It was the coolest spot ever, with neon lights shaped like flames surrounding the outside, which lit up the whole street. Finally, at only 23, I had my own thing, my own 2 things, real, legitimate jobs. For the first time ever, I loved what I was doing. On top
That
of
could have
being
been it
super
right there. That could have been it. 2 legitimate jobs. Boom. Salons, car washes. You start spreading that out, getting 2 of them, 3 of them. No more running, no more ducking, no more hiding. That could have been it right there. But usually a good story, that's never it.
I loved what I was doing. On top of being super busy, making sure both businesses were running smoothly, I purchased my first house and completely gutted it. Interior design was my thing, so I went all out decorating it and put in an awesome gaming room for Xavier. My house was modern, warm, and well put together, just like me. Unfortunately, things with Kay had become up and down. We'd started breaking up all the time, usually because he'd cheated on me. I kicked him out because he got an ex-girlfriend pregnant, and I swore there was no coming back from this one. It was over for good, and I decided to go to a club to hang out with my girlfriends. We were sitting in the VIP section, talking and laughing, and as I raised my champagne glass to toast being single, I glanced out into the crowd.
It's Kay with 2 hammers and shit. Like, you think you single? All right.
There was Junior. We made eye contact, and he walked through his entourage to greet me. Liv, what are you doing here? You're the last person I thought I'd see. Do you want to join me for a drink? Can we go outside instead? I asked. There was no harm in getting one little drink, but I was worried word would get back to Kay, and he'd come and find me and drag me out of the club.
To get you, create a war between him and Junior. Sometimes women don't understand the consequences of their actions. Little things like that, you already know, you already thinking about it, you already worrying about it, but then you utilize your best judgment, because y'all could get dudes killed. And it happens all the time.
Even though it was over, just saying hello to Junior felt like a betrayal. "Of course," he said. "Let's go to my car." We sat in his car and talked for 3 or 4 hours until the sun came up.
Wildin'.
Few things had ever seemed so natural, so right, but on the drive home I started thinking, what am I doing? I'd felt an attraction to Junior, and it was something deeper than I had with Kay. I hadn't done anything, and besides, Kay and I weren't even together, but my stomach was in knots, like I'd just cheated. Every time I tried to make positive steps in my life, I faced heartache. So even though I'd broken it off with Kay, made a great home, and loved my work, life was about to get really bad. When my ex-husband Leo went to...
So technically the story has changed between this and what we heard in Surviving El Chapo, I believe. If I recall correctly, in Surviving El Chapo, Jay said we never had nothing before while Kay was alive. But maybe he considers this nothing. You know what I'm saying? It was a drink. It was a conversation. It was friendly. He can't speak to her feelings. You know what I'm saying? She can't speak to his. At the end of the day, it's just, it's just words. So far as we know, they haven't consummated that friendship or relationship.
When my ex-husband Leo went in front of the grand jury in 2000, he didn't just snitch on his drug dealer buddies. He also told on me. We weren't married anymore, so I wasn't protected by the law. Junior heard from his brother Adrian that Leo was planning to snitch on me as soon as our divorce went through, and he tried warning me. Leo's just threatening me and trying to control me, I thought. He won't actually go through with it. Unfortunately, I was wrong. The feds raided my salon in front of all my workers, then hauled my ass down to the federal building for questioning. Leo accused me of laundering the money he'd made from his drug deals. The feds' proof was a $76,000 deposit I'd put in the bank, but that was money I'd made playing blackjack in Vegas. It was clean. I was clean.
Val, ice in her veins. She even hit Vegas for $76,000 or whatever it was, boy. Shorty loved the game. She embodied all the hustles, boy. Embodied that shit.
I was clean, and I was going to prove it. "We won't charge you if you wear a wire on Kay," the investigator said as he questioned me.
Wow.
"We've wanted him for a very long time, and you're going to help us get him." "You're saying you want me to tell on Kay because my ex-husband is telling on me?" I was not a snitch, bitch. Snitching was something Leo did, not me. "Yes, and if you don't, we'll indict you. You're facing 7 years in federal prison." Fuck that. I wasn't a rat, and I was never going to be one. I decided that I was going to stay loyal to Kay, so I told the feds to go to hell. Because I wouldn't cooperate, they indicted me.
Again, that could also, people say, I think I heard Damien Cash say, they said, somebody, I think it was Al Prophet, asked him, you think she had something to do with Kay, with his death and stuff like that. And he was like, man, she denied wearing a wire for him and, she was holding him down. Was it a loyalty here to herself? Was it a loyalty to herself in the sense that I'm not no rat, I'm not going to rat on nobody? Or a loyalty to Kay? Either way, she didn't wear a wire on him and they stood together. So
I hired a defense attorney to represent me because there was no way I was pleading guilty to 7 fucking years. I was determined to take it to trial. The feds knew I wasn't backing down, so they offered me a plea agreement for what they call a split sentence, which is 5 months in prison and 5 months of house arrest. My mom is my #1 supporter, and she begged me to keep fighting. But 7 years in prison wasn't a chance I was willing to take. I took the plea agreement and signed on the dotted line. Kay stood by me the whole time, and he promised to do the same forever. So in November 2001, we flew to Vegas, and me and the ghetto superstar got married in this little chapel with no one else around. I told myself that would be my second, best, and last marriage. When I said my vows, I knew I was making a mistake. I didn't even call my mother to tell her the good news.
Yo, like, she didn't want to really marry Leo, because that was more of a obligatory type thing, because he, broke her out the joint. But now she's standing at the chapel with Kay, talking about, I'm making a bad move here, a bad decision.
I loved Kay desperately, but it was a toxic relationship. Up and down and back up again. A cycle of fights and passionate make-up sex. Kay was...
See, to the toxic couple watching wherever you are, y'all ain't the only toxic ones. Toxic relationships been around forever.
more controlling than my first husband and my son's father put together. He beat me hard and often. One time I was driving in my car with my girlfriend after I'd fled the house, deciding once and for all that I didn't want to be with him. As I was driving as fast as I could, I felt something ram into the back of the car like a train had crashed into me. It was Kay. He did it again and again,
That boy
trying to throw me into
wasn't beyond ramming somebody, huh? Damn.
oncoming traffic till the trunk of my car was in my back seat.
That's an attempt, bro.
The police came, but I refused to press charges. They were furious, but I was not a snitch. I always believed Kay would change.
I'm surprised they didn't pick up on that, pick up the charges. There's a whole bunch of illegalities involved with ramming somebody's whip to hell, trying to put them in the oncoming lane.
Even when he shot 5 bullets through my front windshield, I always loved him, even when he put a gun to my head, then turned it on himself and threatened to pull the trigger if I walked out. Junior came by our house after I got back from Vegas. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, and Kay called him inside. "Hey, little brother," he said. "Olivia, show Junior your ring." I picked up my finger, but not my head. I just couldn't look at Junior. "Oh, you got married?" he asked. He didn't sound upset, just shocked. I was so embarrassed. It wasn't that I wanted to be with Junior. I was faithful to Kay, and Junior was a gentleman. I just knew that he suspected what I felt deep down. I'd gotten married because I didn't want to be alone when I went to prison. Kay was a convicted felon, so he couldn't have visited me if we weren't legally married. I tried to love Kay the 5 months I was behind bars. In prison, you have all the time in the world to think about nothing or everything, and I chose to think about myself mostly.
So this is stint number 2, jail stint number 2 for Val. Shorty lived the game, boy. Shorty lived the game. She's already had the whole Mexico situation, the whole buying her way out of prison or escaping out of prison, however that went down. Now, the same buddy that supposedly rescued her from that she married obligatorily because he rescued her from that. Now he ratted her out. Now she's going back. So this is her second stint. Mind you, living a whole nother cartel wife life. Crazy story.
Mom and Dad visited me with Xavier, who'd been asking for months to see me. While it was painful to see his little face as he walked into the visiting room, it was almost worse to see my dad. Dressed in my prison garb, I could hardly look him in the eyes. Then there was my mom, who'd lost her mom the day before. My sweet, pretty grandma. And I hadn't even had a chance to kiss her goodbye. My mom was broken, yet there she was, trying to make sure I was okay. I thought, my whole life, all she did was put me first, and in return all I did was push her away. I really believe in karma, and I decided bad things would keep happening to me if I didn't do better. I didn't come from a broken home. I had a great childhood. I'd just chosen to run wild. I needed to make better decisions, and that meant surrounding myself with better people. I realized Kay wasn't among them. I started calling him less and less, and I asked him to visit me once a week rather than twice. For the first time in my life, I began loving myself and feeling like I didn't need a man to make me happy. I could take care of myself. When Kay picked me up in June 2002, at the end of my time, he was a different person. He'd always hung out with rappers and music producers, but he'd founded his own record label called Connect Records and had started working with DMX, Fat Joe, Busta Rhymes,
Forever
and this
X.
up-and-coming artist from Chicago named Kanye West. He went from flashy dude on the street to some kind of rap mogul in a matter of months. His ego had grown right along with his business. I'd changed too. I'd grown away from him. I knew I was never going to leave Kay, though. I loved him too much, so I tried to adapt. I'd go to his studio every evening wearing my court-ordered ankle monitor and we'd record till dawn. I figured, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. So I worked my butt off and sure enough, I discovered I was great at running the record label. I set up an office, hired a publicist, met amazing people, networked, and built up strong business relationships. I was constantly on the phone with record labels, entertainment attorneys, and even famous artists, getting clearance for the records we were recording. We even stayed on the Hollywood set of the movie Never Die Alone, starring DMX for a few months. It was a whole new world for me, and I really, truly loved it. Kay threw a big party at Chocolate Factory, R. Kelly's recording studio, on the 4th of July, just a little bit after I got out of jail. Junior was there along with hundreds of people, and when I saw him, I can't explain it. I just got so overwhelmingly happy. I thought, oh my God, a familiar face. We caught up, and it felt organic, not awkward like the last time. I missed his friendship and the connection we'd always had. I'd lost that connection with Kay, though. During my 5 months of house arrest, even though I was so happy running 3 companies, nothing got better between us. I knew he was still up to no good. Every morning I'd wake up and cook him breakfast, trying to get him up and moving, just so I could get him out the door. I don't think I'm going to the studio tonight, I'd say. All I wanted to do was be alone, and I normally never want to be alone. Then, in 2003, I found out I was pregnant. Kay, I don't want to have this baby, I told him. He knew we'd become 2 different people and that things were just bad between us. I didn't want to bring a child into that kind of situation. I'd done that with Xavier, and while he was my world, I'd been unfair to him. Sure, he'd went to great schools and had a mom and grandparents who loved him, but he'd had a hard life.
Listen, so we from the beginning have speculated whether Val and Jay had something to do with the end of Cato, right? And in Surviving El Chapo, they made the claim, no, absolutely not. We had nothing to do with it. It may look like that, but it is what it is. You would think in the book it would be like supporting that. But a person who thinks that they had something to do with it hears this, and this will only solidify that thought for them. This will only make it stronger in their mind, like, oh, they did have something to do. She was tired of him, but if they had nothing to do with it and she's being honest here about how she felt, it's a crazy conundrum to be in, boy. It'd be different if she was saying, oh, everything was roses and sunshine. You know what I'm saying? I had no reason to not want him around. I had no reason to scheme behind his back. Everything was all good, but that's not what it is. There was drama, there was pain, there was heartache, there was, I don't want to have this baby. I'm not coming to the studio. We separating. I get flustered when I see Jay across the room, whatever, whoop-de-woo. So she's being honest here. She's telling how she felt. But to somebody who's already made up their mind, this will solidify that thought in their head that they had something to do with it. You know what I'm saying? When The two things ain't mutually exclusive. She didn't try to hide it. She didn't try to hide the turmoil in this book that she was going through with Kay. Whether it made her look guilty even more or not, she didn't try to hide the turmoil. So that's something to consider.
I regretted the heartaches I'd put him through, and I didn't want to bring a baby into another single-family home or unstable relationship. If you kill my child, I'll kill you, Kay said.
I'm sure that was
I
his
knew
answer.
he wasn't kidding.
Yep.
Day after day, I accepted my life. I thought, okay, I'm going to make this work. For my marriage, for my son, for my husband, and most importantly, for my baby. Where was I in all of that? Nowhere. I became passive and distant. I didn't fight back when he insulted me. I refused to do anything that would make me crazy, like going through his phone. Little by little, the drama went away, and I just disappeared. When I was about 4 months pregnant, standing outside in front of his mom's house, I saw his closest friend flying down the street toward me. From the look in his eyes, I knew something serious had happened. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Kay's been shot," he said. I don't think I even had time to process what he said. I just sprang into action and started to walk toward my car. "Kay's been shot before," I told myself. "We've been through this. It's no biggie." "Which hospital is he at?" I asked. The answer was drowned out by screams. "They killed my son! They killed my son!" I looked up and saw Kay's mom running out of the house, her arms extended in front of her like she was begging God to give back her boy. I fell to the ground, my belly in front of me, and just lay there on the floor wanting to die. Kay was in a car wash just north of Little Village, and he'd been shot in the head multiple times. A rival gang controlled that part of town, but Kay thought he was untouchable.
Barbershop, not a car wash. So I don't know I'm sure for some kind of book reason or some kind of legal reason they couldn't say barbershop. It was a barbershop, not a car wash.
That he ran the city. In reality, he had so many enemies that he couldn't trust anyone. The funeral was a circus, and it was devastating for me. I just wanted to mourn my husband in peace, but there were probably 1,000 people there, including DMX, Fat Joe's wife, and every Latin king in Chicago. The crowd was a sea of black and gold, and even the roses that were draped over his casket were spray-painted the gang's colors. My dad, a dedicated police officer all his life, stood at my side along with my family, almost all of whom were Chicago cops. Their mouths were wide open the entire time.
I bet.
Not only did they think Kay had left the gang life behind for the music business, they couldn't understand why anyone wanted to be remembered that way. The feds had also come, and they circled the outside, taking pictures, trying to scope out who they might be able to haul in. They knew all the heavy hitters would be there. Everybody kept walking up to me saying, "Oh my God, you're pregnant." And all I could say was, "It's okay, I'm fine." It sounds strange to say now, but with his baby in my belly, I felt like Kay was still with me. I didn't have to process his death if there was a part of him growing inside me, and I wasn't willing to let him go. The twins were there too. Junior approached me, reaching out to hug me. I fell into his arms like a baby. "I'm so sorry, Liv," he said. "If you need me, please call me. I'm here for you." A few weeks later, he called and said he knew I wasn't doing well. It was true. I was so sick I couldn't move and my strength was gone. "You need to get some fresh air," he said. "You're going to make yourself sick, and it's not good for the baby. Can I please take you to lunch?" Junior had 2 little girls named Sasha and Samantha, and being a devoted dad, he understood my pain. He knew it wasn't just me that was hurting. It was my baby, too. I quietly agreed to see him, and Junior picked me up in one of his fancy cars, I think the red Ferrari. But I was so out of it, it could have been a beater for all I cared. I must have seemed so out of place getting into it because I'd stopped putting on makeup and would only wear jogging suits. I looked exactly how I felt, like shit. But the sight of Junior sparked something inside me. "Hey, where are we going?" I asked. "Just up the street. It's nothing fancy." We went to some totally normal diner that I'd passed by 1,000 times. The kind of place where you can sit all afternoon and they'll refill your cup of coffee 100 times. We just talked and talked and talked. He told me about everything that Samantha and Sasha were up to. I talked about Xavier, my pregnancy, and the fact that, because Kay hadn't had a will, I decided to give up my rights to connect records in probate court. I wanted to avoid drama with his family. He asked me if I'd miss the music industry, and I said that someday I wanted to start my own label. For the first time in years, I felt happy and hopeful in the most innocent, simple way. All I needed was someone to feed me and make me smile, to treat me like a normal person and not the $1 million bitch. Inside that diner, that's exactly what Junior did. We started going out to eat every few weeks, first lunch, then dinner. Every time, he reminded me how strong I was, and as my confidence grew, I put away my joggers and started to put on makeup. When I'd see him, my face would light up. I wanted to look pretty again, but not in a sexual way. I was a pregnant widow, and hooking up was the last thing on my mind. With Junior, it was different. It was more like I was falling in love with all of him, the whole person. He motivated me to get working again, and within a month or so, I signed an R&B artist and hit the studio again. Staying busy helped clear my mind, and I didn't have time to feel anything negative. Junior and I went to New York City to record with Swiss Beats and Kanye West, and we shot a video DMX made in honor of Kay. Everyone came out, including Fat Joe and Busta Rhymes. Junior and I didn't care about being around famous people and living that life. When everyone would head out to the club, we'd go to the grocery store, then go back to the hotel, chill out in our PJs, and eat cereal. When it was only us, there was no makeup, designer clothes, or jewelry. We just talked and laughed. It was the simple times that made us fall madly in love. When he asked me what I dreamed of for my life, I was honest. I want my parents' life. I can't be with another bad boy or drug dealer. I need to grow old with someone who can give me stability. Junior wasn't expecting I'd say that.
What y'all got after that was definitely not stability. You know what I'm saying? Probably almost immediately instability kicked in. Facts.
But I could tell it got him thinking, so I continued. "I have no idea why you're in this life, Junior. You can do better. With your intelligence, you'd be successful at anything." Then I paused, knowing that I couldn't live with myself if I didn't keep pushing. "You should change your life before it's too late. You don't want to go to prison like Leo or end up dead like Kay." He just sat there, quiet, in deep thought. A few weeks later, Junior took me to see a show in downtown Chicago, and afterward he led me down a block toward Capitol Grill, a restaurant right off the Magnificent Mile, where everyone knew him on a first-name basis. When we got close, I noticed all the lights inside were turned off. "Junior, it's closed," I said. "Just wait," he answered. When we got to the entrance, the lights came on, and the hostess welcomed us inside. Junior had filled the whole restaurant with flowers. Everywhere I looked, there were long-stemmed red roses, from the front door all the way to our private table in the back. They were beautiful.
Hopeless romantic.
I can't believe he rented out the whole restaurant for me, I thought. Over dinner that night, Junior took my hands, looked at me, and said, "I want to take care of you and your baby. I'll raise your baby like my own." I gazed into his eyes and really considered what he said. This man is as caring and compassionate as my own dad, I thought. I feel truly safe with him. I hate what he does for a living, but this is the person I've been looking for my whole life. I squeezed his hands. Just like that, I knew my baby was going to have a father, and I was going to have a new life.
You hated what he did for a living, but after the fact, because you too was living that life. You was just tired of the life by that point. Little did you know there was going to be another 20 years of that shit. There we have it, Chapter 5, Cartel Wives. That was a good episode. It's a breath of fresh air after a couple of bummer Surviving El Chapo episodes. That was dope. We got through the first, 4 chapters of Cartel Wives, which was basically lists of people that are going to be talked about, introductions to people and their relationships. A lot of names were changed. They called Cato Kevin something. His name was Rudy Rangel. We finally got into some of the juicy details of Val's life, and it was well invited. She broke down her reasoning for certain things. She broke down, what she was going through, so that was a good look. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Chapter 5, Cartel Wives, that was a winner, so that got me looking forward to Chapter 6. With that said, if you have yet to subscribe, please do. Hit the like button and notification bell so we can keep this channel moving forward. I appreciate you. If you're looking to purchase Cartel Wives in any of its forms, there's a link in the description, an Amazon link. Peace.